I appreciate everybody coming out tonight. My name is John Davis. I'm the manager of member services here at Ozark Electric. And just want to go ahead and give our presentation concerning heat pumps, rebates, and community programs. So we have some speakers tonight for our agenda. We'll start out and we'll have Ken Raming, who is our professional engineer here on staff at Ozark Electric. Ken's been with us for 24 years. Before that, he spent 14 years as a consultant. I think his last position there was with Toth and Associates. I have Marcus Shane. Marcus is second generation HVAC technician, now third, sorry. Have a fourth generation, is that correct? So you must really like it or you find something else to do in the family. So Marcus is going to kind of give us that real world experience if we have some questions and some things like that. Anna Ely, our member energy specialist, will talk to us about rebates later on. And then Jennifer Mayfield will also talk with us. She's our communication specialist. She'll talk to us about some of the community programs that Ozark Electric is involved in, some of those upcoming programs for our kids in schools and such. So we'll go ahead and get started. We'll ask Ken to come and present on heat pumps.
I heard that. Well, thank you, and welcome everyone. So we can learn about heat pumps tonight. And I know we have some experts in the room here tonight, so I may pawn the questions off onto them that may know a little bit more about heat pumps than I do. But first off, what is a heat pump? A heat pump is basically a heat exchanger. It's not creating heat. It's grabbing any heat that it can find from the outside to bring in or the inside to take out. So it's exchanging heat. It's never really burning any fuel to create heat, right? So it's looking for it all the time. And these are the parts that make up a system. So we have either a condenser and or evaporator in the system with a compressor. So the compressor compresses the gas that's circulating inside this closed system. The condenser is what's going to release heat. The evaporator is what's going to absorb heat. So we're looking again. So if you're in a heating situation, you're looking to grab any heat it can find from the outside of your house and put it inside your house. If you're in a cooling situation, it's doing the reverse and it's trying to take any heat inside your house and push it outside. So it's always trying to exchange the heat from one point to the other, all right? Two basic different types, air source and ground source, and they are exactly what they sound like. So if you have an air source heat pump, it is using the air to try to extract heat from the air and put it into your house, okay? Ground source is doing the same thing, but it's trying to get it from the ground. So that's when you have some type of ground loop system that's going to be buried in your yard to try to take heat from the ground into your house or take heat from your house and dump it into the ground. So those are the two different types that we have. They are efficient to different degrees, and we'll talk about here in a little bit. The air source heat pump is going to be efficient in a mid-type range of temperatures. Okay, a ground source is going to be much better in the lower temperatures because the ground is a pretty well constant temperature where the air is not, right? So you're looking to grab the heat from the ground that's usually 50, 60 degrees depending on how deep you bury your loops and bring that into your house or exchange back out, right? The air can vary dramatically. So big differences between those two. They also come in what we call ducted and ductless type installations. So a ducted heat pump system is like your normal centralized air conditioning you have in your house. It's using your ductwork in your house to do the heat exchanging. Or you have the ductless, or most people call those like a mini split type situation, where those don't have ducts. You're putting them in specific rooms or areas that you're trying to heat and or cool. So not using a centralized ducting system. We talk about efficiencies when we talk about heat pumps. and there is what they call a coefficient of performance, or which is essentially efficiency. What the output is divided by what the input is. How efficient are these things operating? On an air source, you usually run anywhere from a 2.5 to a 4 in those numbers. That means for 1 kilowatt hour of electricity used, they can produce anywhere from 2.5 to 4 kilowatts of heat. So pretty efficient, although if you look at the bottom of this graph, they are highly dependent on temperature. As the temperature goes down, the efficiency goes down. Because as it gets colder outside, and the air is much colder, it can't extract as much heat as if it's warmer, right? So as the temperature goes down, they get less and less efficient. They still work, but there's less heat outside on a 20 degree day than there is on a 40 or 50 degree day, right? So it's a lot harder to extract that heat out of the air the colder it gets. Your normal HVAC type system isn't dependent on temperature, right? If you're burning gas or electric, that's not dependent on what the outside temperature is. It's going to put out a constant temperature based on the fuel that you're using. Okay. So limitations of an air source, again, typically work between, or threshold of down to 25 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit. So as you get colder than that is when they start having issues extracting that heat and become less and less efficient. So what that happens then is some other type of fuel is going to need to kick in order to make up that difference. So as I set my temperature on my thermostat to 72 degrees, let's say, I want it nice and toasty inside the house. And if it's a really cold day and I can't extract that heat, it's going to want to use the other type of fuel to get you to that 72 degrees. Okay. The backup options for that are either electric resistive heat, which has a low installation cost but a higher operating cost, or what they call a dual fuel type system, which combines the heat pump and usually a gas type furnace. Okay. That has a higher installation cost up front, but requires access to either natural gas or propane or some other type of fuel source, right? So that's the auxiliary heat, and we don't want to confuse auxiliary heat with emergency heat. So if you're talking auxiliary heat, that is some source of fuel that's going to work in conjunction with your heat pump. So your heat pump is going to crank along all it can, and when I set this thermostat on 72 and the heat pump says, hey, I can't get to there, it's going to kick in your auxiliary heat, whether it's heating strips or gas or whatever your other source is, usually those two, right? Emergency heat says, I'm only working by myself alone. Emergency heat only works when your heat pump doesn't. So your heat pump's broken, it's frozen up, it's not kicking on, it's not working. That's when you have to manually kick in the emergency heat. Right? So it's only working off emergency heat at that time. It's not working off of the heat pump at all. So auxiliary heat is in conjunction with, emergency heat is instead of. Yes, sir.
Gas furnaces don't work simultaneously with the heat pump. So
right.
once the heat pump gives up, it's not a supplemental, it's an alternate source of heat. So the heat pump shuts off as soon as the gas furnace comes on.
Right. But the heat pump is not inoperable at the time is what I'm saying. The heat pump's working, it can't get there, so it goes to auxiliary to help it. As soon as it gets there, the heat pump can still work. Emergency is, I'm not using the heat pump at all.
It can go back to the heat pump
right.
as the temperature in space
once it gets there.
But it does stop operating whenever the gas furnace is running.
Right. I guess I should say, I meant it to say it's not inoperable. It's still operable.
Right.
But they don't work simultaneously at the same time. It's one or the other, but they're still working in conjunction with each other. Is that a better way to say it?
Your control's going to pick one or...
Right. But it can go back and forth.
Yes.
Is it the same thing with heat strips?
No.
No.
Heat strips work in a supplemental, not just an auxiliary fashion.
Thank you. Any other questions on that? Okay, let's talk about your thermostat. Important things to consider on your thermostat is only change them a few degrees at a time. Okay. A heat pump wants to work very gradually, right? It's not a instant on, instant off type thing. It's going to take it a little while to get there, right? So if I want my house at 72 and it's 60, if I crank it to 90, is it going to get there any faster? No, right? It's just going to take a long time, but it's going to try to get to 90. But it's not going to get to 72 any faster than if you just set it on 72. All right, so when people do that, or vice versa, if you come home and you're hot and you crank it, oh man, it's hot in here, I'm going to crank this down to 60 degrees. It's not going to get colder faster. It's just going to take longer to get down to 60. All right, so the key is, especially on programmable thermostats, when they first came out, a lot of people would vary those dramatically over the day. But when you do that and you let your house heat up and then try to cool it back down again, you kind of hurt yourself in doing that, right? You just want to do it a few degrees at a time and let it gradually get there instead of the big swings. Right? Any questions on air source heat pumps before we go to ground source? So ground source works pretty much the same way, other than you're using the earth as your heat transfer point, right? In cooling mode, I'm trying to take any heat out of my house and put it down into the earth, cool that back down, and bring it back into the house at a lower temperature. In the heating mode, I'm trying to do the reverse. I'm trying to take any cold air, put it down into the earth, grab that warm stuff that's down there, and bring it back into the house. So it's just exchanging the heat using something in the ground, what we call a loop, ground loop down in the ground, that it's going to absorb and or dissipate heat. Okay. Other than that, it works pretty much the same way as an air source. It's just got a different source of heat that it's bringing in or dissipating out. A couple different types. Horizontal loop is where you take that ground loop and you bury them horizontally in the earth at a certain depth. It takes a lot of space to do that because you need a big field and a lot of ground to bury those loops horizontally. Or you can do it vertically, where you're going down a further depth, but you're not using as much ground space in order to do that. You still got to get down that certain depth to get to where the warm source of heat is, all right? And these other two, I'm not sure of. I've not really run into these two, a pond loop or an open loop. I'm assuming if you had a pond that you wanted to put your loops in the bottom of the pond, you could do that to exchange the heat. Open loop requires a high quality well water, so you're actually pulling that water in, so you don't want to be pulling in pond water, obviously, but those are other two sources of places you can exchange heat. I'm not really aware of those types. Scott's kind of nodding his head over here, but
I have a friend with a
pond.
pond loop. He pulls out well water, sort of like an 80 foot, 100 foot, like shallow well, kind of weird thing, and then dumps it in his pond. It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
It's,
I've not seen any of those myself, but I'm assuming somebody's got one.
it clogs up a lot.
It does it.
So that would be an open loop.
Yeah.
He's just discharging into a pond.
Right, that's closed.
But the heat source
Yeah,
is in the ground.
Is in the ground, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Usually the bottom of the pond.
Not in that situation.
No.
In the pond one, yes. In the open loop one, no.
Right, his
Yeah.
is not a pond loop. It's an open loop. It's just.
Right.
You have
You're
to
using
find-
the well water, right?
You have to find a place to dispose of that water.
Water. Okay. Efficiencies of that. So a ground source is more efficient because you're using the earth as your heat source, right? You're not having a temperature problem with changing in temperature in the outside air versus the ground stays really consistent. So much more efficient. Also more costly up front to put in a ground source versus an air source, because now you have to bury all these loops in the ground, and that's a bigger expense than your centralized air source type heat pump, but less affected by the outside air. Oh, I skipped ahead to myself. So significantly higher upfront cost for a ground source, mostly due to the loops, excavating, drilling, trenching, whatever you have to do. But it has a longer payback period because it is more expensive up front than an air source type. So if you're looking, if you're okay with a longer payback period, if you're gonna build a house and you plan on living there for 30 years, that's something to look into, right? If you're gonna be only in one place for 5 years or something, then you're never gonna pay that off on a ground source type heat pump.
There's also greater subsidies for the ground
Source.
than the air source, so you can get a lot more money from other sources besides your own bank account.
Right.
That helps a lot.
Okay. Conclusions then? So there are two important things to consider, is either efficiency and or cost when looking at an air source to ground source to a traditional type heating system. Everything has its pluses, everything also has its minuses, right? So nothing in this world is free. You're always going to have a cost and a benefit associated with whichever type you pick. We said the ground source is best for long term. Air sources are more cost effective up front, but they have the problem with temperature extremes, right? And your traditional HVAC has a lower initial cost, but may have a higher operating cost as you go down the road. So, unfortunately, everything costs something, right? Nothing for free. Any questions on that, or I'm going to turn it over to Anna to talk about the rebate program. She is the rebate expert. If not, Anna?
I thought I'd invite Marcus to share any insights he has, anything we missed, anything you want to add, especially on the ground source side.
I mean, there's a lot of different ways, a lot of different scenarios, but the only thing that I've seen basically differs a little bit from what he was saying is what we've been seeing, what customers have been reporting back to us is about a 3 to 5 year payback period. So if your conventional system, whatever it cost you, the geothermal is usually about double. And that difference in cost is usually paid back in 3 to 5 years. That was actually before any of the tax credits or rebates. So if you just take cost per cost and pay that difference off in 3 to 5 years is what we've seen. The tax credits are substantial. I mean, they're 30% on residential, so basically 30% of your job cost is got back in the first year. It's not a depreciation, it's true money. I mean, it's if you're part of organizations that are nonprofit or tribal or government or anything, it's actually 40%, and it's a direct check from the U.S. Treasury. So it's cool. But I mean, you throw in, we've quoted jobs, I mean, all out there, and you can compare them to dual fuel, conventional heat pumps, and most definitely if you're on the co-op, between the tax credit and the rebate together, a lot of times it's the same cost, or even in some cases it's been less than the installation of conventional systems. So,
Marcus, one more thing about the heat pumps. You and I were talking not too long ago, like a conventional air source heat pump unit, how long are the warranty on those?
most manufacturers are given 10 years.
What's the warranty like on the geothermal, the ground source?
Most of those are 10 years. However, there's different manufacturers that will do extended warranties. Intertech has GeoComfort and Hydron Module. it's a pretty small upfront cost. I want to say it's $250 to $500, and it actually adds another 10 years on top of the 10-year warranty. Bosch, I haven't seen that with them, or Water Furnace, or Master. I'm not saying that they don't have them, I know Bosch doesn't offer that, because we install those as well, but as far as like, what we've seen also is in comparison to, like, say, geothermal systems or ground source systems that were installed like in the 90s. We've changed out a lot of those, and actually just seen a customer this week that he's on Berry Electric down in Cassville, but he actually had a water source heat pump we put in '92, I believe, and we changed it out last year, and he's already done all the calculations on it, and he said basically he's going to save about $1,000 a year in operation. That's just efficiency versus the old geothermal. So, you know, because I have a lot of customers that'll ask me like, well, my bill ought to be a lot cheaper. Well, they also got to understand that most of the time, if they've got say a $300 electric bill, that of that, the geothermal unit may only be $30 to $60. So when it just depends on their usage, you know, and every house is different, and every customer is going to be different, you know, their lifestyle, what all else they have on it. But you know, and I know for years there was a lot of customers that would be like, well, we talked to so-and-so, they're on Ozark, and I'm on Ozark, and, you know, their bill's $100 and mine's $250, and our houses aren't that much different. Okay, well, what else do you do? Well, like, you know, maybe the other one's a single couple, and the other one, you know, they've got 3 kids at home, and, I mean, one had a diesel truck and they plugged it in, you know, there's just all kinds of variables, so everybody has to always keep in mind that in absolutely everything that you plug in your home is going to be reflected on your utility, not just the heat and cooling part of the house. So, and I think the different, because we've got customers on White River, Berry Electric, Mack County, or New Mack, and actually, I think we've got some on Sac, those things. But I don't know, I can't remember all the differences. You know, I know that there is some on rebates between all the co-ops. And you guys are still at $750 a ton, and then what's your change-out rate? 150, okay. So I think everybody, I mean, I don't know what they all are, but it all adds up. And so it really, when I look at numbers and I talk to customers, it's hard for me to push a high-end conventional heat pump. When I say that, I'm talking about, you know, like some of the variable speed units that are out now that are like 18 and 19 and 20 SEER versus a geothermal system, because the expense of those units are so high, even though there are rebates for those, and in each tier you go up in that, you're going to get a higher rebate or a tax credit on them. But what I've seen on that is that the cost of the equipment doesn't go up at the same rate that the tax credit is for them. So we actually ran that against a customer here about 1.5 years ago, and they wanted to do ultra high efficient dual fuel system and get a tax credit on it. And so when I changed their basic mid efficiency system to that, it had went up so much that the money they were getting back didn't matter. I mean, it was still going to cost them a lot more money to install. So then I took a geothermal system, compared it to it, and that one ended up being less than the mid mid-tier. When I say mid-tier, is about a 16 SEER system. So, you know, there's lots of numbers, and when people go out and they get quotes and they look at different numbers between different contractors or different things like that, and they're just comparing, there is so many different systems out there that you can get a number on and a quote for, and you just got to really be careful and really look at the whole picture. So, you know, you touched a little bit on it, on being in the home for a certain amount of time. Like I'll tell customers, if you're going to be here 3 to 5 years and you have the room and you can do a geothermal, then do it, because you're going to get your money out of it. And then if you turn around and you sell that home, appraisers have really gotten better on recognizing that value, and so that value is up on the house when they turn around and sell it. But longevity is the biggest thing. So conventional systems, manufacturers give an average life of about 10 years. Some say 10 to 15. The geothermal equipment's average life is 20 to 25. So basically, if you pay twice as much for it, you're going to spend that money again in the life cycle of the one unit. And the ground loop is pretty much there forever if it's done right. So it has a 300-year half-life expectancy in the ground. So once it's there, you can tear the house down and rebuild. And we had some that were destroyed by tornadoes. They basically moved over, dug a whole new crawl space, basement, built a house on it. We dug down to the ground loop, found the lines, brought them in the house, tied back onto it. So that expense and everything is gone, up front. But the equipment is expensive. So geothermal units are very expensive, but conventional now is getting so expensive that they're getting close, and the efficiencies just aren't there. You know, they are to a degree, kind of like you were pointing out, the 4.0 and the COP, which that's kind of a confusing thing, but basically you can think about that as a percentage. So a COP of 1 is 100% efficient. So the amount of energy or electricity you're using, you get 100% of that back out, thus the space heater or electric resistance heat of any kind. The COP of 4.0 means it's 400%, so the amount of electricity you're paying, you're getting 400 times that of heat, basically, for that same amount of energy. So the air source is when it's 60 degrees outside. It can be a 4.0. But the geothermal thinks it's that all the time, which is where we really dive off. And then basically based on weather bin data over the last 100 years in this part of the country, we are 30 to 40 degrees in the winter more than we are any other temperature. We have more hours of that than we have anything else. And so when you compare that to a conventional heat pump, that's its threshold. You know, that 30-degree mark, when you set up dual fuel systems. Some customers I can get by setting them up 35, some of them want it 40. It depends on them and how they feel the heat is and everything else, but you start diving off past that and they really start going downhill on efficiency very quickly. But there again, 30 to 40 degrees is a good temperature. I mean, it's that more than it is anything else, and that is still a decent temperature to work with air source heat pumps. So they're not horrible in this part of the country, but you will have more spike billing with it, and you will have more demand billing.
You have something to add?
Mitch had a comment on this slide.
Yeah, I wanted to comment just a little bit on this slide. My name is Mitch Sims. I'm the director of District 6 Moe & Clever. I retired from the HVAC industry in 2001, after 32 years, so I've got a little bit of experience in placement. And I wanted to point out something about this slide. The HVAC system, in particular the heat pump, is just like your human body. Got a heart, that's your compressor. Got lungs, that's your indoor and outdoor coil. got veins, that's the piping that carries the refrigerant, which is the blood of your system. And just like your human body, if one part of your body goes off kilter, your system's not going to work very good. If you get low refrigerant, it's just like having low blood pressure. It's going to be sluggish. You're not going to get all the efficiency out of your system as you need. If your coils get dirty, it's just like getting pneumonia in your body. Your system is not going to get a good heat transfer indoor or outdoor. You're going to lose efficiency. So to get the best money out of your heat pump system, the ideal thing is to have that system cleaned and checked at least once a year before heating system, and that's to have a good qualified contractor come out there and do a coil clean, indoor and outdoor, check the refrigerant level, make sure it's all up to par, make sure all your electrical truck connections are good, and you should be good to go. Probably good for a year, but I personally like to do this in the springtime before cooling sets in, and also in August or September before the heating season checks in. The other thing, the most critical thing that's out of sight, out of mind, people forget, change your filter at least once a month. They've got these high efficiency filters that say you don't have to change them 90, 120 days. I'd still go ahead and change them more often than that. But a clean system is a good, efficient operating system. Oh, yes. Thank you.
Yes, very good. And that is one thing I was also going to mention too, is a lot of times HVAC companies will have some type of a program for, getting your system serviced twice a year, and a lot of times they'll tack on a discount if you ever do need a repair. The HVAC company that I use does have that. You pay a flat rate for the year, they come out twice and service your system, so that's a really good thing to get kind of plugged into to make sure your system is working appropriately. So we're going to talk a little bit about the rebate programs that we have at Ozark Electric right now and the ones that are coming up in July. There's a little bit of a change to the program. Our rebate program comes from Associated, so they pass down our qualifications. So for right now, this is how they are. We have an air source heat pump rebate for $150 per ton. Must be 17.2 SEER 2 or above. That's the seasonal energy efficiency rating. Same thing right now for dual fuel and for mini splits. So it's pretty much all tied into the same program there. We have a rebate for advanced thermostats, so those will be your programmable thermostats. That's a $50 rebate. It's 50% up to $50, and it has to be Energy Star rated. This heat pump water heater is not necessarily new technology, but something that's starting to really grow in popularity. So it functions kind of the same way that your air source heat pump would, where it condenses the air to heat the water. And so with those, we've sub-metered one, and it was 0.26 for the kW, I believe. So where your traditional water heater is going to be at like a 4.5 kW or higher, depending on the unit that you have, these heat pump water heaters, if they don't kick into their backup, are extremely efficient. So like we mentioned earlier, ground source heat pumps are $750 per ton for a new installation. When you go to replace that unit, it's going to be $150 per ton. And you can see the energy efficiency ratings there for that. And like I said, the mini split heat pump is in the same program with the air source and dual fuel. And then we also have an electric vehicle charger. It's up to $250. And currently a window air conditioner up to $50, and it has to be Energy Star rated. So these are the changes that are coming in July. So the reason that Associated has decided to change these is so that they can kind of align a little bit better with the way that that we are billed and the way that our members are billed as well. So they're taking out air source heat pumps that are not dual fuel. So They do have to have a gas backup. They cannot have a resistance heat backup anymore, electric resistance. So a new system for that will be $300 per ton. Or, I'm sorry, a replacement system. New system, $500 per ton. And they're switching from SEER 2 ratings to HSPF 2, which to me aligns a little bit better because that's the heating rating rather than the cooling rating. And a lot of times when we talk about the efficiency of a heat pump, we kind of talk about the heating a little bit more. They're also going to require that we have all of our invoices and our certificates available to them when we submit. The level 2 EV chargers, instead of it just being 50% up to $250, they're switching that to the charger having to be a minimum of $500. And the cost of that rebate cannot go to getting the wiring done or the work done to the home to have that put in. So for ductless systems, it's still going to be $150 per unit. But with that, they're going to take out the window AC units. They're more efficient than those AC units, and so that'll be kind of the option for a smaller space HVAC option. Heat pump water heaters are bumping up to $750 per unit, and not much is actually really changing with ground source. They're just requiring that all of the documentation is submitted at the time that we submit it. So, any questions on rebates?
I do.
Yes.
On the air source heat pump, you said it has to be a gas backup. It can't be a fan coil with no auxiliary heat built in.
I think that it can be. I think that you can have it without auxiliary heat. It just cannot be an electric resistance. But let me double check and I'll get back to you on that.
Because that's the same way a mini split was.
Right.
It's just a heat pump without. And mini splits need supplemental heat typically also. Oftentimes a space heater or a gas wall heater or something.
Yeah, let me check and I'll get back with you to to make sure, but I'm pretty certain that's the case.
With a lot of the technology now, you can, with some of these variable speed compressors, whether it's geothermal or air source, either one, and with some of the air volumes being a little bit reduced, you can actually size your heat pump a little bit more toward the heating load, not 100% of the heating load by any means, but a little bit more, and use less auxiliary heat.
Right.
So, and then still, some of those systems are limited on the cooling side to prevent it from cooling too much so that you don't get the dehumidification.
Right. Yes. Any other questions on the rebates we have available? Okay, well, I will go ahead and Jennifer's going to take over to talk about some of our community programs that we have coming up this year.
Okay, is everybody excited for community programs?
Man.
Woohoo!
I'm the resident cheerleader around here, so I'm always trying to pump everybody up. So as John said earlier, my name is Jennifer Mayfield, Communications Specialist here at Ozark Electric. I'm just going to briefly talk about some of the community programs that we have, mainly for youth, but we do quite a few programs within our service area. So I just wanted to bring it back to the cooperative principles and why we do these community programs and outreach opportunities. So if you came to the last Co-op 101, or if you know anything about us, which I'm sure you do, we are guided by 7 cooperative principles. 2 of those really call us to be active in our communities and active in our local schools. So the first one is cooperative principle number 5, education, training, and information. So we use that one really to not only invest in our employees,
but also invest in educating our members. And that's through what we're doing tonight, Co-op 101 programs, electrical safety. So one of the big things that we do is travel to local schools, and I'll talk about that and teach electrical safety to kids. And then our youth tour and cycle also. And then number 7, concern for community. I mentioned this last time in our Co-op 101, but this one's my favorite. We try to be very community minded, and we know that we need to contribute to, especially the youth within our service area, and invest in them and invest in their futures. Okay, so one of the first programs that we offer are the Power On electrical safety presentations. So this is just a little reminder. When we go to the schools, we tell them all right off the bat, always assume the power is on. So that's a good takeaway from tonight. Just always remember, if it's plugged in, the power is probably on. So we travel around, our member services team, to the local schools. This was the Trinity Lutheran School in Freistadt. That was our most recent one. And these are free presentations. We do them for preschoolers, which is that group there, all the way up to high school. We even will do adults. So prior to me being here, we've done bus drivers, first responders, all sort of trainings for anybody that anybody that could use a refresher in electrical safety. I've even learned stuff teaching these now. I'm like, oh, maybe I shouldn't do that. I didn't know why birds sat on power lines. I didn't. But now I do, or how they can sit up there. In 2024, we presented to almost 1,600 students, pre-K through 12th grade, a few adults in there as well at a safety fair that we went to. But this is one of my favorite things to do. I love going into the schools and especially talking to the little preschoolers. They're so cute. Youth Tour and Cycle. These are 2 programs that we're actually actively promoting right now and accepting applications through March 7th. This is just a few pictures of Youth Tour. So what this one is, we've been doing this for over 50 years. It's an essay contest for high school juniors in our service area, and they can apply to win an all expenses paid trip to Washington, D.C. for a week. It's part of not only Missouri, but a national youth tour. So cooperatives across the country send delegates to Washington, D.C. during the same week. There's about 2,000 there. And it's just an amazing experience for these kids. I've heard nothing but good things from the students that have been able to attend this program. They are able to see really almost everything that Washington, D.C. has to offer, all of the big landmarks that you can think of. They're able to experience that. It's an opportunity for them to travel. I was at a high school today, and some of the students were like, wait, we've never been out of Missouri. They just were kind of like, wow, we could go to Washington, D.C., and it might be the only time they are ever able to leave Missouri. So we feel that this is a very, very important opportunity. We select 2 to go on the trip, and then we do cover the expense. It's about 21 cents per member to send 2 delegates on this amazing trip. That's just a list of everywhere they get to go. I won't go through it all, but they get to do so much. The Cycle Youth Conference, this is for sophomores in our service area. It's new this year. In the past, we've always only done juniors, but we're doing sophomores this year just so we can reach another group of students, and hopefully they'll go to Cycle, and then maybe they can go to Youth Tour, and then maybe they'll apply for a scholarship whenever they get to be a senior. So this one is a leadership conference in Jefferson City. It's for 4 days during the summer. They get to learn firsthand what it's like to be involved in the legislative process, so they actually get to debate a bill on the House floor. They learn about cooperatives. They do a lot of leadership training. And again, they're with around 100 students from Missouri. We cover the expense for this one as well. Great opportunity. Again, I've heard from students that have attended this. This one is a lot more hands-on and a lot more cooperative focused. But we cover the cost, and it's about 5 cents per member to send 2 delegates. That's just a list of things they get to do. Our scholarship program, that's another one that we have open right now. We give away $2,500 scholarships to students within our service area who are attending college or trade school. They don't have to attend college. It can be trade school. There are some certain requirements, so they have to meet a certain GPA. Their counselor has to submit information to us. And it's really intended, $500 probably. I was explaining this to the kids that I've been traveling around to see. Today, that's probably not a lot, but what we want these students to use it for is to help them get to college. Like, maybe they couldn't get there if they weren't able to get some items for their dorm room, or maybe a laptop that they might need. If we can help get them that so that they have a way to do their homework and stuff like that. So that's really what we focus on. Now, can they use it? Absolutely, for tuition, books. That's another great thing. But we want to encourage them to get to college, to get to trade school. So we want to help if we can. And the total cost there, it's about 36 cents per member for those scholarships. Additional programs, we do have other things. We have Energy in Today's Classroom that we can send teachers to. We have FFA Drill Awards, so we provide a new drill to an outstanding FFA student in each of the high schools within our service area. We're planning a co-op camp for this summer, so we're going to bring in probably middle school age students to learn all about co-ops for a couple days. Co-op 101s like we're doing tonight, member appreciation days, we do safety days, we do career fairs, all kinds of stuff. So a lot of engagement opportunities. That's all I have. Any questions on our programs? Not one? All right. Oh, yeah.
Safety classes, but do you guys reach out to students that are homeschooled?
We will do those, yes. I haven't specifically reached out to anybody, but yeah, we will do anybody that wants us to come do a safety presentation. We will do it, absolutely.
A lot of times in the past, that the homeschools kind of have the co-op setting maybe once a week or some different things like that. So we've done those to go into, when they do go into a classroom, to that co-op setting, go and, talk with them about electrical safety and things like that. So,
Yeah, do you have a contact number?
Yes.
We'll be more than happy to.
Give it to them and.
Yep.
I will,
we can
yeah,
coordinate it.
absolutely.
More than happy.
Yeah.
One of the things I will say real quickly too, some of the community programs we've done for years and years, that FFA Drill Award, we have literally been doing that program so long ago that they were hand drill Yankee drills all the way up to 20-volt lithium ion batteries now. The youth tour was actually something that was started by LBJ in the early 60s as a program to take rural kids to Washington, D.C. to have those opportunities. So there's a couple of programs that we still participate in, those two specifically that we have done for decade upon decade. Still great programs today.
Any more? Okay. Well, I think that's all we have. I'll let John wrap it up if he's got anything.
Do appreciate everybody coming out today. Since we've kind of a small group here, if we have questions later on, we can certainly ask those. But if anybody has questions now, we can certainly ask those at this point. Patrick. Yes, sir.
And this may sound remedial, but if someone leaves their thermostat on the same setting throughout the winter, will their bill not change, or will it change?
So the question is, if we leave our thermostat on the same setting throughout the winter, will our bill change? The question to that is, yes, it will change. So let's say, for instance, we have that thermostat set at 68 degrees. So if it's set at 68 degrees and we have a temperature of 50, it doesn't really work too hard to maintain that 68 degrees. Now, if it's 68 degrees and we're at 20 degrees or 10 degrees or even, in the teens or in the single digits, it's really, that system is really going to have to work where it might just cycle through for a couple of minutes to catch back up to that. It's really going to struggle, and it's really going to have to work hard to maintain that temperature. That's a question we get a lot of times. Folks truly do believe that if I just set it at this constant temperature and I don't change it at all, my bill will remain the same. Untrue. Systems having to work much harder to keep that temperature up in much colder weather. Obviously in the summertime when it's over 100 degrees or in the 90s, it's going to have to work hard to cool to that temperature. Good question.
Okay, and then for clarification, on my thermostat, if I move it to emergency heat because I don't think it's warm enough coming out of the register using my conventional,
Yeah.
is that going to affect my bill?
It will. So question was if we change that over from our air source heat pump over to emergency heat. As we mentioned earlier, unless we have a backup, a dual fuel backup, if it's just running on straight resistance heating, most of those resistance heating are going to be heat strips. They're going to be anywhere from 15 kW to 22 kW. So as soon as it turns to emergency heat, those heat strips kick on. You're basically blowing air over coils, much like a hairdryer, to heat that up. Very inefficient heating. I think Marcus had spoke about that earlier, kind of a one-to-one, but very, very inefficient heating.
It's about 3.5 BTUs per watt.
Okay, yeah. So not only is that obviously going to cost us more in kilowatt hours, if that 15 or 22 kicks on, it's going to increase our demand greatly.
Yeah, heat pumps, even inefficient heat pumps, are down or up to about 7 to 8 BTUs per watt.
Yeah.
As long as it's in a decent operating range for it.
Yeah.
And it could be 14. And with geothermal, it can be much higher than that.
Yeah.
Could you touch on the weatherization program a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, the weatherization program, we've done this. I think we started the program back in 2015, actually May of 2015. So we work with OCAC and also in 7 of our 9 counties. I think we work with the neighborhood center in 2 of our other counties. And so, you'll have to forgive me, I may have to ask Anna a couple of things as I'm not in charge of the program anymore, but a great program. It actually is $350 is what is paid towards that. We pay a percentage, Associated pays a percentage. We do ask our membership to cost share in this, but the cost share is $75. So for $75, we have a licensed auditor that will come to your home. They're going to go through everything with a fine-tooth comb. One of the biggest things they do is they're going to put a blower door on one of your doors. Going to show you where all your air leaks are at, where you could use more insulation, how efficient your home is, how it draws, how it insulates. So very, going to get a really good idea of what that home is going to be using for electricity, we're going to be using for heating and cooling. We also have a rebate associated with that. So if the home energy auditor comes back to you and says, you could up your insulation in your attic to, let's say, R38 or whatever that number is. And the reason why I use this, if you'll spend $1,500, is that the new cost? $1,500, $750? $750. Okay. So if the auditor comes back and has a suggestion that you spend money to, and they'll give you a cost analysis also. If you'll spend this amount, you'll save this amount throughout the year. So if they come back on those list of recommended measures and say you could use more attic insulation and it's going to cost you, let's say $2,000, we'll rebate $750 of that back to you. So we'll cost share half of that up to $1,500. So we've done, since 2015, probably 250, 300 of those audits. I was in charge of that program for quite some time. I've never heard anybody have a negative experience with that. Everybody learns more about their home, the efficiency of their home. So it is a great program. So if you want to please, it's on our website. You can contact Anna if we have additional information. Be more than happy to get you signed up. Our auditor does run a little bit slower, so it may take, depending on the time of the year and the busyness, anywhere from a month to maybe close to 2 months, 6 weeks before we can get it.
The last one that I got today, I sent like 6 last week. So the last one that I got today was scheduled out to the end of March. It takes about 2 hours, depending on the size of the home, but he'll come out one morning. And like John said, he goes through everything with a fine-tooth comb. He will look at your ductwork. That's a big one that we see is ductwork that's not pressurized properly. Definitely insulation, but he's going to go through and find every little air leak and tell you about it. I had one done on my own home, and I thought I knew what I had going on, but I didn't. There was a lot of things that they identified that I had no idea what was going on.
Yeah.
So I think the program is very much worth it to
I think a lot of people are also under the impression when they do these that their windows are inefficient. You have to remember a window is just a pane of glass. Whether you put 13 panes together or it's just one pane or double pane, there's only so much efficiency there. Now around the window and that air coming in, that can be a bigger difference than just the window itself. So a lot of times folks assume we have bad windows. The window may be fine. It's just the area around it. So something to consider. Also something they don't do as far as the rebate back. There's no rebate associated with it. If there's problems with your HVAC, whatever it is, that money doesn't go towards the repair or replacement of HVAC equipment.
right. But ductwork.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of times when we do these, we find out that the duct work is either not routed correctly from the beginning. Some of the duct work is maybe fallen down, needs to be replaced. And so a lot of times it's really eye-opening for a member to see some of these things that they had no idea about. They've lost efficiency from their home over the years. Well, that ductwork might not even be connected underneath the house or up in the attic, wherever it's at. So, you know, it's hard sometimes for us homeowners to want to climb underneath the house or climb upstairs or climb in the attic and do these things. Well, the home energy auditor does these things for us and gives us a really good idea of what's going on in our homes. All right, guys, thank you.